up, you guys? Turn it down a little bit there for you. Okay, so welcome to part 3 of the end of year 2022 series I got going with Craig Zahler. Thank you for everyone who came by and checked out the previous 2 episodes. We're burning through, I guess this is going to be, we're getting closer and closer there. This is going to be 10 through 5 for Craig. Mine were really in no particular order, but nevertheless. Now, what we're listening to in the background here would have been on my list. It would have been one of the adjacent records, if you will. Probably not a true metal record or rock record, but this is Arcanist. Perfect timing. All right. They are, I guess initially they got a lot of attraction for sort of speaking to some degree of the dungeon synth crowd. But as you can probably tell here, they're heavily inspired by the Berlin school of electronic music. This, I have the previous release, I think that showed up in my music or Sick That Makes You music video. But this, which is far more like electronic and synth purely, the Hyperborean, which is this one here, the second full length on Yilgith Records, excuse me, ventures a little bit closer to some black metal moments, but still it is primarily electronic synth drama record. Anyway, this is my favorite track. I think it's the Storming of the White. Man, I can't read this in Old English. It's the second track. The second track on side 2 of this record. Maybe I'll just put in the comments the name of this song here, but the Looming of the White Worm. Let's go with that. I mean, that definitely looks like the White Worm, right? Anyway, it's an amazing album. Super cool. I don't get into tons of dungeon synth because it kind of feels often like a one-note thing, but this album's integration of the Berlin school I find to be a bit more captivating, and then you introduce a little bit more of the black metal stuff. It just makes it more of a dynamic listen. So Hyperborean here is playing in the background. Now we'll get into the Craig Zahler part 3. Check you guys there. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
So speaking of popular albums that are getting a fair amount of love, this is the new Undeath album, and It's Time to Rise from the Grave. So I like these guys. I like their first album a little bit more. To me, I'd say the parallel holds pretty strong with Necrot, where I thought their debut was really good, had all these really memorable riffs, vocal ideas, arrangement, really good sound. And then the next album, in the case of Necrot, I think got like the arrangements got more complicated, but some of the songs didn't quite hold together. So I thought it was like I thought the first one was just a little bit better. And in the case of Undeath, they're doing a catchy, let's say, stab at like the catchier side of Cannibal Corpse, like So the Bleeding, that a bit that sort of thing. The riffs aren't specifically that thing, more in the vocal approach, which a lot of times in this band is to their benefit, but sometimes a little bit too much like that thing that I said that Barnes and Corpse Grinder do, which is singing the riff too much in lockstep or just putting syllables on beats. So I enjoy this album. It's coming. I've listened to it a bunch. Yeah, I think, like Fiend for Corpses, this is enjoyable. This is a good example of like, I wish the singer was singing something where the vocals didn't link up with the descending riff. The second one, Defiled Again, is a cool 6/8 thing that goes to like a mid-pace chug. The Rise from the Grave title cut is nice, and like it's almost like a priest like stab that, or actually maybe actually a little bit more Slayer in terms of that leak, the it's time, and the way you're getting a clear guitar line and idea, and the vocals seem to be their own thing a little bit more. This singer is very good. Like, I like his voice, the quality of his voice quite a bit. And it's just like, I just want him to come up with his own stuff that is not just either landing on all the beats or following the riffs. And he does a fair amount of good stuff. Though, like the next song, Necrobionics, the verse in that is a bit on the rappier Chris Barnes style. But the tremolo break is really cool. That song overall is really strong. Enhancing the Dead. This is one where it feels, and this is like, I guess, the other thing I like from this band, because they come up with catchy hooks, catchy vocal parts. The sound is good. It's organic. It's got a lot of snap. It's a good punchy sound. It's not really that cavernous thing. It's more like a punchy, immediate sort of thing. And something I look at the song like Enhancing the Dead, and this is actually a problem I have with Cannibal Corpse, and I have every Cannibal Corpse album, and I like let's say most of them, and it is, I feel that there's a compulsion, and sometimes this has to do maybe a little bit with the band in the rehearsal room a lot. I know when I would rehearse in metal bands that I was in, we would tend to get more elaborate. I would get trickier with the parts. You're playing the same, like we would rehearse these. Let's say if we had like 9-10 songs we're rehearsing, we're going in for a 2 or 3 hour rehearsal. We're playing these things a lot. If we're getting together every week or 3 times a month or however often, you tend to busy up things. And a thing that I hear in Undeath that I hope they sort of progress from is this idea that like all of the tempos should be addressed in each song. That we should have a fast part, there should be a mid-pace part, there should be a slow part, or maybe a really slow part, maybe a really fast part. And I think that this is something that hamstrings Cannibal Corpse and to some extent Undeath in spots where it's like, I find a mood, take your best ideas and land on it. Like, so for instance, when I said the idea of like that Surreption tech death band seems to know where to land. Like this song, the Enhancing the Dead, this thing has like a really good lick that sounds like something from The Lion's Den by Morbid Angel. My favorite song on Covenant by far, and maybe one of the few co-written on that album by Vincent in terms of the music. But there's a lick in here that reminds me a little bit of Lion's Den. And man, I wish they settled on that lick and like played with that for a while. But then you get additive meter stuff where they're adding beats and they're going elsewhere. And it's a fine enough song. But that to me sounds a little bit like the band, like their idea, like compared to Sedimentum, they have a lot more cool, catchy riffs, fun vocal parts, and all that sort of stuff. So I think that they're playing with greater tools, but Sedimentum with less, with essentially like one highlight riff per song and a bunch of stuff that takes you from place to place. They're maximizing what they have. I think they're maximizing and overachieving with less good core ideas. And these guys have a lot of good core ideas, but sometimes the arrangements seem a little busier. And like my favorite Cannibal Corpse song is Scourge of Iron. And that song has like a fast intro, and then it's the whole like shit. Give me an out like, And I mean, and that out Torture, I think, is probably almost as good as the greatest hits for the rest of their career. That album so stands above anything else they did, with the possible exception of The Bleeding. I really like that one a lot as well. But so anyways, back to Undeath. That's something I like. I could see these guys making a great album. I could see them I really like the first one, and I like this one. I could see them doing something better than their debut. But like for me, it's probably not going to be something where the songs all have like 5 tempos. It's going to be like some songs should do that, and that's cool. Right. All that shifting, but to me, it's like it's almost you're not landing on a mood, or you're not landing on a main idea for what that song is. You're just giving a lot of ideas, and in the case of Undeath, it's a lot of good ideas. But there's like Enhancing the Dead. To me, that song just doesn't have an identity. Funeral Within is cool. The chorus is a little bit goofy. And then Head Splattered 7 Ways, a highlight from the album, probably the highlight. And I wonder if the Head Splattered 7 Ways is 7 because there's like the chorus riff is a 7/8, which is an unusual meter to play in. And so I wonder if the 7 Ways was a 7/8. Who knows? Perhaps I'm counting it differently than they do incorrectly. But the mid-pace breakdown is good. That thing is really solid. And that one I feel kind of lands and commits. Then we move to the other highlight of the album, The Human Chandelier, which moves through like a lot like cool, like they're doing some picking up, like up on the neck in terms of like some arpeggio stuff is really nice. It's this has like it's odd. Like every time I hear this, I think of, though I think it's better, I think of that Diabolical Masquerade, which was like the Catatonia guy and like maybe Sueno Dan, like, and so it's like this. So this thing has like this kind of B movie horror quality, but it's and they really play with these parts well. They do the chorus riff. They eventually rework it to almost like a slam riff, and so like that, like those are 7 and 8 are the highlights for me for sure. And it's a case of like, I feel like they're playing with and developing these ideas as opposed to just giving you more and more and more ideas. The Bone Rot is a little bit straighter after some of the playfulness of the previous ones. You get there's a cool 6/8 departure. You get these like anvil clangs. They start dropping out beats and playing with meter. Again, this sounds like a band that rehearses and enjoys rehearsing and enjoys playing with each other. But in this case, to its benefit. And then the last song, the Trampled Headstone, the way the vocals hook up in the chorus with the riff, really good. The departure with the harmonic pinches and the long growl is really good. And then this is another lick that reminds me a bit of again of that Lion's Den Morbid Angel thing, or Sworn to Black, as it's switching into that 6/8. Really strong. So this is the thing with this album. Like my favorite songs are 7, 8, 9, 10. So it moves to the better stuff. I think it starts with one of the weaker ones. But like if I'm arranging an album, like I want it to end, like I would have the lead off be real strong, but like the fact that this moves to all of the best material and it's 7, 8, 9, and 10 on a 10-track album, that it like I always enjoy, like I start this album like this is pretty good, and then by the end I'm like, oh, this is good. Like a lot of those songs I feel like particularly Head Splattered 7 Ways and Human Chandelier, I think those are as good as the top stuff on the previous album. And then the last 2 are as good as like the next best stuff on the previous album. So it ends strong. And my guess is these guys are a good live show. I missed them when they came around, but do plan to see them and like what they're doing. They have a lot of success. I think there are definitely people out there who begrudge their success. These guys are creative and playing their asses off, and it's enjoyable. I think like starting to look at come up with some 6-7 minute songs. Some of those songs are mostly slow. Here, like 2-minute blaster. The shit is all fast. Like I think differentiating between the songs and them not being so many, like so regularly having all the different tempos and kind of different qualities will make them better. And I mean, and I think that's a difference between, I think there's a reason that like, I like Cannibal Corpse stuff, but but Morbid Angel is one of my favorite bands of all time. And this is a difference of like, I think Morbid Angel, even though their songs like Fall from Grace or whatever, where they do play around with a ton of stuff, most of my favorite songs by them are not doing that much switching around. I mean, my favorite albums by them are Domination, Gateways, and Altars, and they're not they're not the albums with all that switching. So, did you check out that album?
I've heard pieces of it, but it's one of the like major records this year that I've heard tons of people get into, and I have not had a chance to listen to it. So,
okay.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of, I do agree though, like they've reached a point, like a threshold of success where now they've started to have plenty of detractors. I think is probably a kind way to phrase it. They've got a little bit of hate just because of how successful and visible they are. But like to some degree, that it's always going to happen. And
Right.
I think the fan base that they recruited, earlier on is still supporting them, and good for them. Like I don't wish them anything but the best,
Yeah, and I think, I mean, again, like sometimes that's like I think these guys are deserving of their success, and the music is there, and the music speaks to it. But then I remember, I think it was last year or whatever, that like when everyone was shitting themselves over this, and I'm going to say it incorrectly, I'm sure, this Sangwishabog or whatever that thing was. Yeah. And that shit was completely unmemorable and I think not good at all. Like when that thing, and I don't know that people like, they're very excited for it to come out, and they had a demo that was better than that, but I still don't think good. And I don't know that that band is going to last. I think some of their, like they have the crazy name, and then they were doing some joke videos. I don't know if there's a future for that. But like Undeath, I think the music is there. So I think whether you like them or not, like the creativity and the music is there. They're going to put out stuff. Some albums will be better than others. But like when I was just saying Wishabah, I'm like, man, there's like ideas. I don't know if you heard that or if you liked it, but I was like, I just didn't think I didn't think there was anything there other than this kooky name and the videos, and then like this, like the repellent vocal approach.
Yeah. So the Sangwishabog. Yeah.
That's what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a lot of, I want to say also, criticism because they had released an EP and had spent a lot of time and money in terms of marketing towards like, clothing and things of that nature, where but it was like, I think fans wanted more focus on an album or music as opposed to all this sort of apparel if you have, whatever, a handful of songs out. So
okay, I didn't know about that aspect. I just, for some reason, it seemed that they were all over the place, and I listened. I'm like, man, this is pretty unremarkable.
Yeah.
Like, and again, there's straightforward things that, like, I enjoyed that whatever Frozen Soul album, which I think sort of in this same discussion of like they got pushed in a different way. It's not incredibly memorable, but I think it's decent. I mean, it's straight up Bolt Thrower Worship with a couple of like kind of hardcore breakdowns. Right. But I think it's decent. I think the ideas are there, but that other band, I didn't get it.
But I do hope for success with Undeath, and I think your description of the appeal for that band in terms of where their influences are coming from are dead on. So
yeah, I hope that I think that their best album, I don't know if it's their next or the one after, but I think it's to come. I don't think that they peaked with the debut. I just think that the debut was a little bit better than this.
Okay. So I'll take over here. By the way, if at some point I may need to switch microphones, so I'll let you know when I do that. But
okay.
Okay, what I kind of think I would like to pivot off of these choices here, but we'll just go in first. So I would call this, if you wanted to say my technical death metal release for 2022, this is Heaving Earth. See if I can get the glare off of that.
Mm-hmm.
And entitled Darkness of God. So Lava Dome Records is probably the label I will spend the most amount of time paying attention to with bands that are kind of playing in a style of technical death metal or 2000s death metal that speaks to me. Heaving Earth. I think this is their third full length. So it has the weight and ugliness at times of that northeast immolation, Morpheus Descends, Rotrevor, like that kind of death metal from that region. But the guitar style traverses up to a certain where it's really high up on the neck, and they're playing it's like, to me it sounds like these really high note sort of chords. It's not a solo. It's an actual sort of like chordal structure. I don't know how to describe that. I'm not a guitar player. But they're just altering the way you would play a death metal riff that leans itself into something that would be conceived as technical death metal just because it's so, I guess, like unorthodox. But that high end sort of clean sort of chord structure that they will play with and just move seamlessly up the on their guitars is a totally unique way of playing death metal to me, that I don't hear anyone else doing. And to some degree, I kind of feel it's a disservice to call it as technical death metal. But I would probably say, especially today's climate, there's probably the first thing that people will grab when they hear it. But it's the sort of high note, clear sheen kind of guitar work that has a very different kind of melodic approach to how to play death metal guitars. Anyway, this is to date their best record. I have their previous Dethroning I'll look it up here. But Darkness of God is the one you want. It is potentially, I've listened to that death metal record more than anything else this year. And a totally unique way of playing guitar. Yeah. So Denouncing the Holy Throne was in 2015. Their first release, Diabolic Prophecies, in 2010. But Darkness of God is the one you want. And hands down, one of the more unique death metal records I heard this year, with an incredibly interesting way to play death metal riffs. So I can't recommend this one highly enough.
Cool. Is it obviously, if you're bringing up the technical thing, are they just jumping all around the fretboard and a lot of tempo changes, or you're calling that just because it's the playing is so interesting and there's not a better classification?
Yeah, it's because when you think of, to your point, like technical death metal, it's often this sense of like frenetic pacing and just incredibly complex sort of runs, and they will move up, they will traverse up the fretboard, but they stay there. So it's actually like a more structural, or it's sounder in its sort of bass, as opposed to something fleeting. There's something more foundational to the way they're playing that element to them, to the riff. So
okay.
I don't want to give the impression, for example, that it's like this incredibly busy, complicated, running all over the guitar kind of arch spire, right? It's not that at all. It has more in common with that kind of northeastern death metal in terms of its darkness and weight. But they will add this change in the guitar elements that make them totally unique. And I think the best way to understand them is technical death metal, but it requires a bit more qualifications in describing their sound.
Cool. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. All right. Go for it.
So this next one I discussed on the on Heavy Metallurgy, as it's the new Blind Guardian album.
And yes.
Enjoyed this. It's one of, I mean, the At the Edge of Time is definitely my favorite post 90s Blind Guardian, and the 90s Blind Guardian is my Blind Guardian. Like, those 4 albums are significantly better than the ones that came before and after. But this album I enjoy, and I think on this album, like, you know, the drum playing, it's quantized and processed to such an extent it could just be a drum machine. I'm sure it's not. They're you know, this band has great players, but like, that's something that's missing from the old days, is the heft of Tom and Stouch kind of doing his thing. And the first song is like, after doing this weird orchestral failure of an album, they're coming in with Deliver Us from Evil and giving you the thrashing speed to kind of like show everybody that they can still do it. And it's fine. It's not that memorable. I've listened to this album, I'm going to say like 8 or 9 times. That one never really sticks with me. The Father Deliver Us from Evil line, you know, kind of does. Damnation, the next song, you've got, you know, like cool hammer-on lines underneath, but the damnation, destroy their plants, I will survive. Like, they have the nice, lush Blind Guardian chorus, and then the really active wah-wah guitar at the end of that album is sort of like the stuff that you get on Nightfall. And then you get the absolute highlight of the album, which is Secrets of the American Gods, which is really like, you just get a nice phrase with the Secrets of the American. I can't sing the note, but he, like, when he bends up there, and then like, and at the end of the song, he does a little bit of a screech. He's not going to the stratosphere as much as he once did, but like, after 30 some years of singing this way, that makes sense, but he can still get up there. But you better save yourself, and it's like this like crack bend up that's pretty cool. Violent Shadows is like some of these songs like Damnation. It's like pretty much just lives for the chorus, and then the which is like this, like, which isn't great in this case, but pretty good. The Life Beyond the Spears has a really somber chorus, so this is. See my note on the Scorpions, where it's like these Germans can do the big sing-along somber chorus. Well, Life Beyond the Spears has that. Then Architects of Doom is pretty forced. To me, that's the other one that I'm just not really that into. But it's also sort of weird that he's vamping out this line about the hybrid child. So vamp on. It's not like I'm coming home, you know, like Dio or something like We Rock. It's like hybrid child, like he's rocking out the hybrid child. It's a weird one. There's a German prog band called Eloy, and then where they're rocking out the Child Migration. It's so strange. This isn't quite as awkward as Child Migration, but it is strange. The hybrid child. Let It Be No More is another standout, where it's that somber thing. And again, like Living for the Chorus, Blood of the Elves is forgettable. Destiny, the last song, is pretty good. You probably want to watch when you're doing a swinging 6/8 with a bunch of chorus vocals that you're not singing Frozen, because it's like, it is bringing a certain Disney movie to mind, which is the strong point to end this album on. But there's a good there's a good wah-wah twin guitar line at the end, which is sort of a standout for him. So overall, an enjoyable album. I mean, not really anything bad, not anything excellent, but like, to not include this, like, part of it is like Blind Guardian spoiled us, because like, Nightfall on Middle Earth is awesome. Tales from a Twilight World, that one's awesome. And Imaginations from the Other Side, I think, is one of the best albums ever recorded. So their highs are really high. And it's really only measured against those. Like, if none of those albums existed and this was a new band that released this album, I'd like to think I would put it in the same spot. The reality is, it's like, compared to their best stuff, this doesn't compare, but it's enjoyable, and they've had some missteps. And this is not a misstep. This is an enjoyable album. So, Blind Guardian. The God Machine. I may not have said the title.
Okay. Yeah, I do like the Craig sings Hansi. That was
it's pretty painful for all involved, but I can't.
No, it's come so naturally. You could tell like how like you get to this moment, you're like, I have to. This is the way it makes me feel. I'm going to let you know.
I've got to. I've got to do it.
Please keep going. Okay, between the Megadeth grammar lesson and the as well, perfect. Okay, Epic Doom. So there are, for me, two. I guess they're a group of musicians. So this is Monasterium, and let me see if I can get the glare out of that. Cold of Their Graves. Now, essentially, we have this band, another one called Evangelists, that's another band out of Poland. They share musicians, and they're very similar in my mind with Procession and Capilla Ardiente, which are in Chile. So they're both kind of epic doom bands that share musicians, and every single time they release an album, it's guaranteed quality. This is not necessarily the most original or inventive stuff out there, but for someone who loves epic doom, who is all about, Candlemass, Solitude Aeturnus, there's not necessarily tons that is being thrown out there that is inventive within that category, but this is much more a question of how well do you understand the genre and how well do you execute the sort of within the key pieces to it to sort of satisfy my like bare minimum requirement, and how well you sort of bring that to the full. They nailed it. This is my favorite epic doom record for this year. Anyone who does not know Monasterium, I would definitely recommend this if you're into that like Candlemass vibe. Evangelist is the other band that they share members with. It's also worth your time. So Epic Doom 2022. This is my favorite.
Cool, I'll look out for that. I go back and I mean, like the band that I did with my songwriting partner, Realm Builder, like we had songs in that style, but I go like hit or miss in terms of finding stuff I enjoy. Like there was like a demo or first thing by this band, Wandering Midget, I thought was great, and then I didn't like anything they did that followed it up. So it's up and down, and then that Ari Honkonen guy from Morningstar did 2 albums with Minotauri. That thing, yeah. Those are fantastic. So like, particularly that second one, that's like, so cool. I'll check that out. I have like, in a way, it's a tough genre for me to get insofar as like, usually I can listen to a song and have an idea if I'm going to enjoy the album. Not so much with that. Like it has to sit for a while. Like it's got to marinate. And then also like you got to listen to a couple songs, and that might already be 20 minutes of time.
Sure.
So yeah. Cool. I'll look into that.
They're whatever 9 minutes a pop, right? So
no, right.
Yeah.
So usually I'm like, I listen to 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, that's pretty good. I'll order it, and then I get it. I should have listened to more than 3 or 4 minutes. So
Okay.
my one, we're at number 10. We're going back to Canada, Riot City, and so this is this is obviously new wave of true heavy metal, if you want to call it. It's interesting. I think this is a lateral move from the first one. I enjoyed the first one. I think the first one has better best songs, and I think this one is more consistent. When I listened to it, I was like, oh, the singer was a little bit better on the first one, but I did not know it was actually a different guy. So what happened? Have you heard this album?
I've heard a couple of tracks, and I felt a bit cautious about it because I was like hoping to be completely won over by it, and I did not have that immediate reaction. So I said, okay, I probably came into this with too much expectation. I need to step out, remove myself from the scenario, and come back to it at a later time. So
yeah, I enjoy it. So I think it was Kale Savvy was maybe the guitarist and singer on the first one, in an unbelievable shriek machine. Like this is more, although new wave of traditional heavy metal and it's conjures certain things, like this is kind of like Hellstar in terms of the intensity of the delivery. Like there's a speed and a thrash aspect to it, and this dude is redlining in terms of the notes that he's hitting and injuring himself. And so this album, I feel. So I didn't realize it was a different singer. So he sounds similar enough. I'm like, oh, he was a little bit better on the first album. So my guess is, since that first singer was a singer and guitarist, this is pure conjecture that he's like, man, this is really impossible to sing this way and play guitar live. We need to find someone who can do it. Because really, like, there are plenty of guitarists who sing and play guitar, but they're not singing like someone like someone is like squeezing Eric Adams, business with an iron glove. So this dude is in that like shriek register and go, and not only there, but I have to imagine it's for live purposes, or for some reason, maybe the performance on the first album is like the result of tons of studio magic. I don't know. But the singer is going to be what's discussed a lot in this band, because it is an endless wall of shrieking, which I think they would be improved if there were a little bit more variety with that sort of stuff. But like this is sort of an odd one in that I think this Eye of the Jaguar is coming out with like this, like belting, like, and the eye of the Jaguar. Like he's just way, way, way up there. And but the chorus in that song isn't particularly good. So like you say, you sampled it. I think this is like another album, sort of like a couple of others I pointed to, like the Undeath. Like I don't think the two beginning songs are where it's at. I think that the beginning song is like showing you how high octane they can get, but isn't that memorable. I feel like the chorus just feels like more verse. Like it doesn't really land. And I've listened to this album, let's say 5 times, 6 times. And that chorus, like I remember it now, but it doesn't grab me. And but it feels like a Hellstar song. And though I am of the opinion, like I like Hellstar before that Nosferatu album more than that Nosferatu album and what came after. Like I like them when there's a little bit more traditional metal and a little bit less that speedy thrash thing. Beyond the Stars. You get the kind of the Hellion intro, not the first album I've mentioned that has that intro, and then it gets into a maiden gallop, where the verse singing is much better and has some high accents. And overall, this one I think is better than the first cut, but not a highlight from the album. So I don't know how that, like, I don't know that this, like, I don't know, like, I feel that those were deliberately chosen to sort of show the strengths of this band and the shriekiness and all that sort of stuff. But to me, isn't my favorite side of this band. That's part of it. Worth pointing out at this point is this Chad Vallier, let's say that's how you say his name. This drummer is great. And not usually a thing in traditional metal bands for this to be called out. But like if you look at Manila Road and the Randy Thrasher Fox stuff, and you look at the Corey Christener stuff, and like these guys are really coming up with complicated parts that are still pushing the song forward whenever it needs to, but like whenever you can throw in like going around the bases, you can do that, or like some sort of thing where it's like a double flam going around on the toms, and or little accents or a little ding on the ride, or going around on a little errant hi-hat and throwing in all that stuff. So this guy's doing this throughout the entire album. And while much of the discussion will be on kind of the old schoolness of the whole thing, and the endless shrieking of the singer, who's now, I think, Jordan Jacobs, a lot of like this, like I think the things that are elevating this material are the balls out, balls to the wall, shrieking vocal performance, and this drumming, which is incredibly tasty. Like, because that overplaying stuff can really get in the way, but if you do it the right way, it can just make everything more interesting. And he's really doing that. So the third song, Tyrant, they lay back a little bit, and actually the riff reminds me a little bit of Rats Lay It Down. There's some punctuation. There's a moment where they all yell out a "Hey!" which every time I hear it, I'm reminded of that glorious moment on the Lost Horizon albums, which are the two best power metal albums ever made. End of discussion. Like they are on another level. There's nothing like those. Those are the gems. And really great chorus, like drum fills in the chorus. This feels a little bit like a solo Halford tune, or maybe like something like the Ripper would sing. And it's really, really solid, but mellower. And same with Ghost of Reality, like a good strong chorus is the landing moment. Let me see. We get to Return of the Force. So here we're getting to, like, they're starting to get a little bit more variety, as opposed to like the chorus just is more verse with the dude shrieking and redlining it. He's doing like, he's up there and is up there, but then you get the gang hall backing vocals that separate it, like Return of the Force. Like it's nicely syncopated, and it just sets it aside. Then Paris Nights, which that title might lead you to conclude correctly that it's a little bit poppier. And then there's some strong gang stuff in that as well. Lucky Diamond, I've heard Be Quick or Be Dead by Iron Maiden. Clearly so have Riot City, because that's this song. You're getting those ideas, but it's an enjoyable tune. And then the last song, the Severed Ties, you're getting a little bit the more the mid-register singing, which it's nice having a break after all the shrieking. The chorus is really nicely arranged. The departure loses its way a little bit, but it eventually is redeemed in the final chorus. So it's an enjoyable album. Like to some extent, I think I enjoy every song on this album, which makes it a step up from the first. But the highlights on the first album are better, and I like the singing on the first album overall a little bit more. But if you explore it, I could see like the first two being kind of fatiguing with all that shrieking. And then I think you start like 3 through 8, you start getting more variety, them doing different things for the choruses and landing moments. So an enjoyable album, and another true metal offering from Canada.
Were you incredibly enthusiastic about their debut, the first record?
I would say similar. Like, I think both of these are good albums. Like, I think that the best songs on the first album I was incredibly enthusiastic about. So I was hoping that the second album would be like loaded with those highlights, whereas I think that the best songs on the first album are better than the songs here, but this is more consistent. Like, that first album has a couple of tunes that I find a bit of a chore, but overall I like the album. And again, like, it's one of these things, like, it's like I have a hard time watching all these, like, and I don't go to many of these like CG salad superhero movies. Even though I'm a big comic reader, just not movies I want to see.
Sure.
It's just like I find it hard to pay attention to that much action and hear like this many high notes. There's a point like I want to hear some other stuff, and you get it. Like I feel like tracks 3 through 8, that's a good journey. The first two aren't bad, but I feel that first song never really land. Like it just feels like more verse, this chorus. He's saying the title, he's saying "I have the Jaguar," and he's saying it very, very highly and very, very loudly. But I just don't feel that's like a landing thing. So I was really like I would say like I thought that they had the potential to be like if they took the best stuff on the first album and were consistently giving us stuff at that caliber, like yeah, they could have an album that I would put in the same classification as the Megaton Sword and the Venator, like in that thing. They didn't land at that level, but it's an enjoyable album. Again, more solid, which I appreciate, but not the song like the songs that I really liked on the first album got me to pull that out more often than I'm probably going to pull this one out.
Okay. I will definitely. I mean, it's been on my list to go back and check out just because of how much anticipation and they'd built so much sort of goodwill from their first record. I think out of the releases that were sort of coming out this year, I think it was like the one to check out. So
yeah, I mean, I obviously I think the Venator is significantly better, but like I don't know if there's a point where you'll just have to tap out with the high notes. Like like when that third song began and I saw they're moving around more, and even some of the verse in the second song is really just that first song is like, oh man, this is shrill. It's not a bad song. I do enjoy it. So there's like, because I'm critical by and there's like the negative biases. You're going to talk about the things you want to be better. This is an enjoyable album. It's more consistent than the first. So overall, I rank it about the same. I just think the highlights on the first are better.
Okay. Here, well, I'm gonna change my microphone, so we'll see how this works out. Hold on one second. Next record for me, we have. Let me get this right. Verbaris, and it's titled "Adumbration of the Veiled Logos." So this one here. Probably the best reference point is it shares members with Ulcerate.
Okay.
So New Zealand, sort of, what do you want to call this? So I think first and foremost, primarily a death metal band, but and I'd be curious to get your thoughts here. This style to me feels like you had death metal musicians who grew up with black metal as a sort of consistent part of their diet in terms of influence. So I don't know if you want to call it atmospheric death metal, but I guess where I'm coming from here is the songcraft or the phrasing for the guitars seem rooted in black metal as opposed to sort of death metal's inheritance from thrash. That musicians who were looking at black metal and death metal simultaneously and wanted to incorporate a little bit of the phrasing from black metal to a kind of death metal instrumentation. I don't know. That's how I interpret this.
Mm-hmm.
Bands like Ulcerate, they kind of come in waves, right? They don't have the kind of precision that I think thrash gave death metal, especially early on. They kind of ebb and flow, and their weight is compounded with sort of each sort of rise and fall of the tide, if you will.
Right.
So I think there's not a lot here in terms of songs. We have 5 songs in 1 hour. The closer is over 20 minutes. So you kind of buckle in for this, but that style of death metal, I really dig. And when you have people who are playing in a band like Ulcerate to contribute here, you kind of trust it. So I don't know how you feel about Jamie St. Morant, but in terms of modern death metal drummers, I think he's sort of top of the list for me. For someone who I like to listen to. The drumming for Ulcerate has always been unbelievable. And that's here on this record, along with the same kind of guitar work, where it's kind of, yeah, a little bit on the experimental avant-garde side, but it's just because it sort of evades a lot of the traditional death metal structure.
Yeah, the shapes. My experience with Ulcerate is pretty limited. The shapes are interesting. I have that. I still have that last album that they did, and I'm like, I like half of these songs, so I don't know if I should explore. Like they just didn't all land for me. The ones that landed, I'm like, I could see why people think this stuff is great because when it lands, I think it really is. And if that, like, I might check this out. If that's more, if it's just going to be for me, it's going to wind up being the consistency because I thought that the one that I own, whatever the last one they put out, I thought half of that really was special.
Yeah, if you want my recommendation, Everything is Fire in 2009 is the one you want to check out from that band.
Okay.
That's in my opinion the best record from Ulcerate. But yeah, I mean, once again, this is also like we're kind of picking up potentially a little bit of bias that I have with, between Negative Plane and this Barbarous here. I kind of like the odd ones sometimes, but I was very much impressed. I was unfamiliar with this project. When I found out they were the band members involved, I was interested and definitely delivered. So if anyone is out there who's interested in this kind of thing, if you want to check this out, it's not going to be too complicated. You're either going to jump in initially and it's going to be like, you know what, this is not my cup of tea, or it may speak to you, but a different kind, once again, a different kind of death metal and kind of an interesting blend of extreme metal that's going on right now that I think is interesting and kind of continually return to. I don't know, like that style, like Mitochondrion was another one that early on was doing it. I don't know if you remember them at all, but
yes.
Yeah. So every once in a while, it can sometimes be a challenging listen, no doubt. But at the same time, I'm always sort of intrigued and we'll jump into that, a couple of times in the course of a year. So in that style, this release definitely did it for me.
Cool. I'll look into that though. Maybe I'm first going to check out the Ulcerate that you mentioned because I was like, oh man, I just wish the consistency was there, but the good stuff is special. I can see it.
I mean, I would say that record, so Everything is Fire, is probably in that style of death metal. That's where you, like, if you want the best that you could be offered, I would start there and you can digress and, if you want to explore it, but that's the first one I'm going to recommend for people who are interested in that style.
Okay.
All right. Okay. You're up.
So here's another one where I feel like the tag for it, the classification for it, I just don't agree. It's just not what I hear. And once again, there's some overlap on what you said, where you're like, you feel that was death metal from people who grew up on black metal. So this next is Illumination, is the name of the band. They're from Brazil. The name of the album is Worship Death More Than Life. And I've seen this on zero lists. I've never seen this mentioned anywhere. And honestly, I don't even know where I found it. It might have been like this dude was in some band somewhere else and I looked at what his other project was, it probably was that. Like probably somebody in this band was in something else I liked. And Brazil, so there are plenty of choices in terms of where that could have come from. So this is something I see classified everywhere as black metal, that it didn't even occur to me that it might be black metal. The vocals are death metal. There are black metal highs. You get some back and forth. I should, a word of warning and a point of comparison. A word of warning. This sounds like a demo, and not in a good way. I feel, but I feel overall the experience here is like I would like if you are into. Let me say this in a way that's not too insulting. So if you're into Worm, and I think that there is some overlap, and I prefer this. The new Worm EP. I really like the Blue Nothing. I like that one song at the beginning, and then the rest of it I could kind of take or leave. And I like their last album and the one before that. I'm not ecstatic about the band. I like ultimately their sound. Particularly like how dry the drums are and how weak the rhythm guitar sounds. I just think like if you're going to leave that amount of space, you need to have richer sound. Like that's like you're gonna if you're gonna do anything that's approaching death doom or funeral doom, like listen to an Evoken album or something like the bands that are doing that sound. Like you're sitting in the sound so much longer. I just think that the guitars need to sound better and the drums need to like that. It's like I'm a little less forgiving when it's that slow because you're sitting with it. This isn't quite that slow. And again, according to everybody except for my ears, this is black metal. There's a lot. Like one thing that's very interesting and is the riffing techniques, which again are reminding more of Funeral Doom, albeit with like kind of a mid pace. So you'll get like so you'll get a lot of different techniques in a riff because they're pretty long, and but most of this album is grooved. Most of the singing I would classify as death metal and is deeper, but there's some high accents and really so like what some of this stuff I cannot pronounce and will not even try. Track one, like NGHWSR. Yeah, like you get this immediately. Like this is something where it's pretty easy. Like you'll listen to the first song. If you like it, you'll like this album. If you don't, you won't be into it. But it has this, there's space. It's kind of medium pace to slower on average. And there are blast beats on occasion, but they're really just for accents at the end of some kind of phrase. Like this is grooved, mid-paced, and slower. Arpeggios get laid on top of things to make them richer. And there's like occult science. The intro has like multiple movements, and then you're getting into you're really starting to get like arranged guitars, and in terms of the way it's stacked, and like sort of a primitive version of a little bit like what Emperor might do, and I guess in this way a little bit black metal, though again the vibe for me for this whole thing is more like a death doom thing. You get like a little dungeon synth interlude that sounds like the Depressive Silence kind of version of dungeon synth, like really sparse. And then the fifth track, I'll not hazard.
I've got it pulled up here. Yeah, this is an interesting.
Yeah, and some of these I actually just physically, it's printed so damn dark on the disc, I actually can't even read it. So maybe this is this, who knows what this
track
is.
5 is Thy Darkness.
Thy Darkness. Okay, that one I went inside, I could find it on the back. Amazingly, there are words on there, but like you know,
Sure.
not visible to me.
But the one prior to it is UY Scooty. So I have no, yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you what that. But then like so that Thy Darkness, you get there's a cool they're doing a thing which is a little bit more of a rock thing where there's like an interplay of like the rhythm guitar and the lead guitar, and it's not like like with a lot of bands it's like the riff, and the riff is the part that brings you to the next part. Like when I'm writing metal songs, I'm writing a riff, and then I'm writing the next riff that happens, and then the next, and then we build out the vocals and all that sort of stuff. And I imagine a lot of bands do things that way. So they're doing stuff where it really feels like a kind of a rich rhythmic part, and then like you're gonna have some lead interplaying, and then the kind of creaky voice on that sounds a little bit like the French band Mutilation, so a little bit pushing more towards black metal in that. And then the next song, that's definitely like black metal singing in the verse and death metal singing in the chorus. And the ending has a really nice symphonic sweep, but not symphonic in that like it's tons of keyboards giving it, like symphonic in that like you're having differently arranged guitar parts, and there's a richness to it. And then the outro, for whatever reason, always reminds me of the intro on Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk, which I believe you alluded to this in one of your things, and you are correct. That is the best black metal album ever recorded.
Yes.
And so this is a little gem that came from the underground, and I don't know. I think I found it like some member of this is in some band where I was like, oh, I'm curious to hear more by them. But I feel like it's like like again, everywhere I see is talking about this in terms of black metal. To me, this feels like kind of death doom with some black around, black metal around the edges. But like the riffing techniques are unique. Like it's like the space of it, like maybe like a little bit more old Rotting Christ, or some strange stuff that Catatonia was once doing in terms of like it's kind of all over the guitar and a bunch of different techniques to make one phrase, and really long good phrases. Like this is like every song on this album is good. It's completely consistent and has a cool vibe. It's well written. It's short. It's like 35 minutes. Legitimately the production, and I enjoy, I have tons and tons of Moonblood rehearsals. Like I can get past that stuff, but here is a little bit of a thing to get past. But I suppose I would recommend it. Like if you love that new Worm thing, I think this puts you in a similar headspace. The recording is less good than that new Worm, but I think the album is better.
Okay, yeah. It's an interesting. I get what you're talking about with the production for the Worm release, but I would be interested to check this out. Yeah, your point. It's just an EP. And I think that
I don't differentiate. Like I think that maybe they're calling it a mini LP, like EP. Like all I'll say is Wolf Slayer Abyss. That's an EP. That's one of the best albums ever made. I don't for some people it's like, oh, we're not getting our value with like the majority of albums released in the CD age forward would be benefited by having less time on them because the quality control isn't there. I mean, it's a huge problem with certain genres in particular. Certainly, yeah, like that's a whole other conversation. But this is solid. It's enjoyable. My guess is you dig it.
Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, I was going maybe to see what other potential band they were associated with, but
anything
well, I was gonna say I think Grave Desecrator is one. A drummer's in that. He's in a bunch of different stuff.
So hold on, is Grave Desecrator? Is he in that Trance of the Undead or something like that?
No, it's the. I guess the band's name is Grave Desecrator, and I guess Cold Blood is another one they all share members with.
Yeah, that Grave Desecrator sounds familiar, so that might have been the thing where I heard something, but I'm like, I was In any case, I arrived it's probably through like the back channels of the
sure
Wikipedia
all the different wormholes you can call them into. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into some trad. This one definitely went under the radar. Now, not only because it earlier in the year when I think more people kind of are more likely to forget it, but it didn't get a whole lot of. I think it was an independent release. So this band is called Memorless. Pull myself up here. And they are out of Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And it definitely sounds like a band that does not have a, Cruz del Sur budget to put out their record. But
polite way of putting it, for sure.
But I was really impressed. So I have some of their previous EP out, and this is Sturdy as an Oak, and they sound like there's a certain charm. I think I'll get your thoughts here on those early Sirith Ungol albums. That they sound kind of sloppy and weird. This never really quite gets there, but it's somewhere between that and like Running Wild, kind of trad gone speed.
Right.
So this is epic metal in the sense, all their themes. You got your, standard knight here. It's titled Sturdy as an Oak. Nothing but sort of Night Lord, dragons, adventure, so on, sword and sorcery stuff. But they're playing at a pace that I think probably is closer to like that Randy Thrasher Fox era of Manila Road, where they've sort of picked up the pace a little bit past where epic metal inherited a little bit of 1970s prog wandering initially.
Right.
But this is somewhere in like the middle of the 80s where I guess speed metal and thrash have had a little bit of like sort of nudged epic metal in a certain direction. So
they rob and they fade away in a blur. The bushman and the one with the Irish temper. The parents strike and then disappear. The troopers that found their true jollity.
I listened to this, I hadn't spun it in a while. And I pulled it back out, and I was very much impressed with it. Once again, I want to say there's maybe another epic heavy metal record that I'll talk about later on. But this is a band, if they had a larger, platform and more PR behind them, they could be on, No Remorse. They're that good. They deserve a bigger platform to play from. So I hope that they get picked up by a larger label in the future. But if you haven't heard it, Memorless, Sturdy as an Oak.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I am my next will be going in a different direction, and my guess is this is the one I'm like, oh, you're gonna have this on your list, so we can.
Oh, okay.
We can chat now. Well,
notes. Oh my God. Okay. So because I can talk about this for a long time. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay. So Blut aus Nord, and I'd say this is some place where I can say my taste diverges from yours, just from stuff you've said and stuff that you enjoy. Like I enjoy a lot of weird stuff, but I would say in general for metal, it's not what I'm here for. Like my musical journey started when I was in elementary school and got into Pink Floyd. So that's where I started, was Dark Side of the Moon, and I was like 10. And someone had printed out the lyrics on the dot matrix printer for Brain Damage Eclipse. So I started out with stuff that I think is pretty weird and adventurous even by today's standards. So my interest in metal, which is like metal, progressive rock, soul, these are my three favorite types of music. If there's a battle, I'm going to pick metal, but you know, they're like the 10 best prog albums certainly can go toe to toe with the 10 best metal albums. And so in terms of that weirdness and experimentation, like growing up as like elementary, like teenage, junior high and stuff like that with like Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Jethro Tull and Pink Floyd and the, you know, like Adam Hart Mother and all of that sort of stuff, like that's not like emotionally what I'm looking for from metal is not weird, which isn't to say I don't like any weird bands, because I do, or bands that have a weird aspect, but like different genres are going to do different things for me. I think there's a lot of like, you know, with death metal in particular, I think there's an empowerment quality. Like I can think of like listening to Boat Thrower and Walking in the Snow and like, and it's just giving you that sort of feeling. And there's an excitement with something like a fun, catchy thing, like those early good God the Throne albums, or like, you know, Whiplash, Power and Pain, like you get that aspect. And black metal can put you in that, like in that sort of dark headspace, but there's also a somber, like there's usually a sadness to my favorite black metal stuff. Like there's an aggressive, evil aspect to it, and then there's a sadness. Certainly, you know, like if I'm talking about like, you know, favorite black metal bands like Emperor or Moonblood, and like a certain specific era of you know, like you know, other band like Summoning or something like that, you're going to touch upon this sort of thing. So Blut aus Nord, is that how you say it? Is it Blut aus Nord?
Yeah, I've heard some people who want to say Blut. That's the sort of French pronunciation, but I've always heard it as Blut. So
okay. So I saw basically this, I think Alan mentioned on Heavy Metallurgy, and then I saw that you did this whole show on this band, and I'm like, I'd always kind of stayed away because I'm like, man, I mean, there are black metal and death metal bands that you can play me, and I will know in less than 5 seconds if I probably want to hear it. Doesn't mean I'll only give them 5 seconds, but I'm going to hear some weird jangly chord, and I'm not here for the dissonance, which isn't to say there's no black metal or death metal that has dissonance that I like. I like Morbid Angel. Druk has some incredible albums. Like that can be a part, you know, that can be a part of it. But in general, like there's usually a tipping point for dissonance. So the Blut aus Nord, like I've always known this, like this is an experimental band that I probably lumped together with like Dodheimsgard and some other bands like that I'm like, and I've had a couple of Dodheimsgard albums. I'm like the experimental one, like whatever, 666 International. And usually that stuff doesn't last for me. I find it kind of interesting, but sort of not delivering what I'm looking for in metal, which a lot of times will come down to like particularly extreme metal, like memorable riffs and like taking me, like if it's death metal, it might be empowerment and aggression. And if it's like a, you know, like a grindcore or gore grind, it might be an assault and a repulsive kind of experience. And heavy metal, it's like, you know, like searching for glory, you know, and like all these different experiences. So anyways, like Alan was talking about this thing, and then I saw you were posting on, I'm like, let me check this thing out. And he also just mentioned like that this has like a really legitimate H.P. Lovecraft feel to it, which there's a quotation in there, and I could pull some grass that I pulled from H.P. Lovecraft's grave that is on the shelf behind me.
Man.
So I'm very into Lovecraft. That was a life-changing author for me as a little kid. And so I like this. Obviously, he ranks really high on this list. And this is something like, I'd say sort of like that that Surreption technical thing. Like, this isn't for me, and yet I'm ranking it really high, which to me is a testament to its quality. And I listened to it a few times. I'm like, why am I responding to this? So for people who don't know, this is like I'm not going to say wall to wall dissonance, but it's a whole lot of dissonant music. It's a whole lot of notes that are so floaty that they don't even seem like they're part of like the 12-tone music system, that are just some like I remember talking with like Carl Sanders of Nile, and he was working on his guitar, and he had like a piece of sandpaper, and he was making like the scalloped fretboard so that you can like push and get all those in between notes by just squeezing. This whole album sounds like that stuff. It sounds like the notes in between the notes. And there's some songs I like more than others, but like of everything I'm going to talk about, like this and the Cryptorm are probably the two most consistent albums in terms of here's what we're delivering. You're going to like it or you're not. There's no version of, man, track 6 sucks and I love track 2. Like you're going to be on board for this experience the same way you're going to be on board for that Cryptorm experience or you're not. And so anyway, so there's what I like about it. It is completely joyless. This is a completely inhuman listening experience. And that's something I'll use to describe Wolfslayer Abyss, one of my favorite albums of all time in any style. That is a joyless, incredible experience that is like this obliteration manifesto. And here it feels like, I'll tell you, this album, I listened to it, I'm like, this album is creatures in another dimension. Let's go to string theory. In the 11-dimensional string theory space, creatures have heard black metal. And then they are trying to replicate black metal. And that's what this album is. And it is very consistently that you hear like these groans coming in, these chants, and I say like as the opposite to me of like the Tool drummer and me complaining about people who don't put the beats in the right place or a place that like this drumming performance, and I'm going to assume it's real. It sounds real, though in tons of spots it's completely perfect, so it might have been quantized to some high degree. Like this drummer is giving you manageable doses of this, so you have some idea where some of this stuff is. Because man, there are times I'm trying to count the beats and have some sense of what's going on, and I'm like it's like the first one. You got twinkling wobbly notes atop what probably people would classify as Atmo black with this inhuman blast beat. And then it progresses into just sinking chords over rolling double bass. And then the phrases get a little bit more digestible because they're shorter. And I'm like, maybe this is a 10-8. Maybe this is a 9-8. Beats seem to drop in or drop out. I don't know where these riffs start. I don't know when they end, but I know that they're shifting. I know that they're changing. And so that sense of movement and like total cluelessness, like for me as a listener, it's pretty entrancing. And there's an ambient outro. Although I said like you're gonna like this whole album or you're not gonna like it, there actually are two that I think are a step better than the rest. And one is the second song, Tales of the Older Dreamer. So you get this chord bending upward tremolo thing, which is like a Glenn Branca guitar orchestra. And then you get these climbing, the climbing verses with like descending licks. This is getting a little bit into that Zahler smeary space. And then there's a solo-ish that happens at around 3 minutes. That really starts to seem like a lead voice. Like this doesn't, because it's not a solo. No dude is rocking it out.
Yeah.
The guitar. But that shit is going on, and it's really, really interesting. And then there's some chant, like monastic vocals, that are happening, into a break, and then there's blasting to the end. That is great. Like that, like if someone is like, "What's the song to check out?" It would be this one. Though there's one other that I think is almost as good. Into the Woods. The first time I've liked something with that name, so I've never been in that. Speaking of the progressive metal, that to me completely loses the point. Almost as boring as Opeth for me. But I know these are sacred cows for people. This is why I got the hate mail, because I'm like,
Sure.
I have given away almost as many Opeth albums as perhaps you own.
I actually don't own an Opeth record. It's
Oh,
a band that I never like. People have always tried to get me to jump into, but I have been trying to get into it, but it's just one of those bands that escaped me. So
awesome sound. And this is when I say, like, when I talk about those early Entomb, like I think the Opeth sound is great. As a vocalist, he's awesome. The richness of the guitars, the production, the playing. I just don't think the songs are there, and never did. Anyways, so Into the Woods. And to me, this is where I look at this band as like, these dudes are smart. These dudes are arranging albums, because this album, you're starting to get these like 2-bar phrases that might be 7/8. I'm going to put a question mark by anything I say technical with this, because it's pretty puzzling. But you get shorter phrases, whether they're 7/8 or it's like I think they're like 2-bar phrases, and there's just a beat missing in every other one. That comes in and it starts to become a little bit more digestible. Like, it's not quite as sprawling, it's not quite as big, and you also get a clearer black metalish rasp. Like, maybe this is the first one where it starts to feel a little bit more like a black metal song. And then there's and I have like pitch shifted backward harmony female voices in Fade Out. So I don't know if there are pitch shifted backward harmony female voices in Fade Out. That's what it sounded like to me. So there are a lot of question marks in terms of what Blue Snort is delivering. But that is all one sentence asking, like, inquiring about one idea. It says a lot to the creativity of these guys. Neptune's Eye, you've got the monster voices are really kind of swirling from left to right. Also more shorter phrases. I feel like those two songs are easier. In terms of just understanding. And then to me, the other highlight is 5, That Cannot Be Dreamed. There's the beginning of that, when it's the roaring, you hear the sirens of New York City.
yeah.
The roaring deep guitar, and it's just the guitars going, and man, is that howling from the abyss. So when I think of the most Lovecraftian things I've heard in like metal music, first I think of Gateways to Annihilation, because that is an absolute monstrous gem. Like, only by a hair do I prefer Domination, and some of why I prefer Domination is the variety. But in terms of that otherworldly Lovecraftian thing, like, this beginning of this song with just the roaring deep guitars is fantastic. And then you get this, I wrote, funky syncopated beat that sounds like epilepsy seizures. So you get this, he starts chopping with this like really kind of like proggy fusion beat, and it's really cool. And again, like that drummer is so important with giving you any way to understand this album. If this album didn't have these drums, this would just be like a noise record. Like, they're so instrumental in terms of bringing you through. And then you get these cosmic winds are reverberating around, and then eventually you get full on, like, I have like 310. By that point, you start getting this counterpoint with this deep guitar going up while the high one rises and sinks. And really, really, really interesting. Like that, as I said, like 2 is probably my favorite, but that one is nearly as good. Like, those are the definite highlights. And then the next tune, you get simpler oscillations and more direct harmonic motion, and you're getting cut up vocals. So that's like you're getting like all these kind of chop vocals. I think that tune is cool. That one feels almost like an outro on almost a more traditional black metal album. So that one has that black metal feel, but like that thing like Dawn of a New Begin, that shit that like Borknagar would put at the end of their albums. This feels like a weirder one of those. And then the 7th track, and I don't know this well enough, and it's so disorienting every time I hear it to speak. Like, the 7th song really feels like a callback to the first song. And you get some finger tapping part and some kind of, and then these like wailing voices. because it's like clear this album was not recorded by humans. It was captured in another dimension. So very, very interesting. Like that. It's not like, I say, like, I obviously I watch your program. I watch Heavy Metallurgy. I watch Melanie's death metal show. I check out Grizzly Butts and Angry Metal Guy sometimes. And I'm searching for new stuff. And obviously this band has been around forever, and I've just always been like, they're gonna have weird chords and dissonance. And the truth is, if this was a dude shrieking at me all of the time and was really fast, this amount of dissonance combined with all of that might have been too much. But because it's almost like an ambient dissonance and the vocals are so inhuman, this actually, I can say, like, this didn't appeal to me as a metalhead as much as it appealed to me as someone who listens to Mertz Bow and harsh noise stuff. It is because it's not really delivering what I'm looking for out of metal. It's using those tools to do something completely different. So it's a really good album, and partly checked out because I saw you were so into them. I need to watch that video. And the only other, do I have it here? I might have it here. I only have one other album by them at this point, which was their second album, something with maybe Father in the title.
Father of the Icy Age.
So I have that. I think that is, that's obviously more straightforward. I think that thing is good. This is better and more consistent, but that I enjoyed that enough where I was like, okay, there's probably going to be some stuff for me to explore, and I should check out your videos.
Yeah. So if you liked the ambient side of that, the record I would steer you towards is called Mort. It was released in 2006 on Candlelight. Have you heard of that one?
I looked at the list of all of them, but it was like, this is a big catalog. And I went back to the early stuff because I'm like, well, that's highly rated when they were a little bit more traditional black metal. And that's good. Like, that went into my permanent collection. Like, I thought that other one was good enough to keep. I think this one is a little bit better. So Mort is the next stop for me.
So I would say I totally agree in terms of how you listen to it and approach a record with this level of dissonance that does not have a whole lot of skeleton to it. Right. So Mort is very much a dark ambient record. So I think if you wanted to explore that side, it does not have as much guitar focus as this harmonium, the one you're talking about there. But yeah, the band is difficult to pin down. And this record is for me a synergy of a few different aspects of the band, but it's why I love it. It is definitely an interesting listen, very much almost without a leading personality, right? In terms of like a vocal presence.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
So it is and I think that is an increasing theme for the project. Is that Vince Vaughn, who does his basic, we speculated as to whether there actually are additional members of the band. They're listed as having a bassist and a keyboardist and a drummer. It may just be all be fictionalized. We don't know.
Okay.
But being the vision of this one person, the guitar playing, he's played with a fretless guitar in the past. And I think that's
with a lot of these notes. Or a lot of these notes.
It's just weird, right? It's just bending everything. There's all this contortion happening with the song structure, which you really have to kind of embrace that level of disorientation to enjoy it. So I love this record. I love this band. Because I spent over 6 hours talking about them, I kind of thought like, I'll leave it off my year-end list. People probably know that I love it, but
it's clearly on your year-end list.
I'm trying to imagine like what would be similar for you. Like if Morbid Angel had put out a tremendous record this year, right?
Right.
Like, not only do you have their back catalog that means something fundamental to you, but
Right.
a new record. Like Blind Guardian had released
Something
a
great.
phenomenal, like not just like a good, but like, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be, it's automatically, not only do you appreciate the record as an individual piece of work, but also within the context of their entire scope.
For
So,
sure.
yeah, love that record. Especially after their last release. I was not so thrilled about Hallucinogen.
Okay.
It just felt to me like the band wanted to do something a little bit different, but it was like a softer kind of atmospheric element that was playing with like psychedelic, not quite like Aranzi Pazuzu, but it just felt, I don't know, the level of dissonance that you hear in Disharmonium, Hallucinogen is going to feel the world apart. Just because the ease of entrance into the catalog.
Okay.
Literally, this is the way I described it, is this is the nightmare, Hallucinogen is the dream. Like they almost operate sonically as like a pairing, just visually and sonically, but they're polar opposites of the same identity. So it was, if you listen to that record by contrast, you're going to be like, this is the same band, which is probably what most people experience with Blue Asnord. Is there's so much variation, and their progression isn't linear. So meaning like they don't start as something
Sure.
intense.
Whatever the muse is, you're going to pursue that at any given point. That makes sense.
For sure. So
yeah, this isn't the product of someone who thinks in 4/4 and straight arrows.
Yeah, but I have to say, like, listening to someone who has drumming knowledge trying to figure out what is going on in this record was that was a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, it's like and again, like some of it is just because as soon as you count it, the refrain gets extended, and then it's done, and then it's like, unless I'm like stopping and rewinding. So it's interesting, but at the same time, I think that drum performance is critical in terms of like giving it any kind of framework for you to understand. And it's like it's particularly good and tasteful, and in a way, like it Hate Forest, and I think all of the original stuff, I think, for that band was programmed drums, but that is also just dividing it up metronomically with these smears and dissonance. It's not this level of dissonance nor overdubs and weirdness, but a sort of similar thing. There's like kind of a mechanical breaking up this thing that otherwise is really just kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
Awesome.
Your next choice.
Yes. Let's go here with, blow myself up. Okay. This is Epitaph and 2. I guess just the number, Roman numeral 2 for this record. French band. They're kind of similar to the Illumination that you were talking about.
Okay.
In the sense that it is 5 tracks, an hour long, and the vast majority of it exists within 3 songs. So in terms of influences, I would point towards Esoteric, Catatonia, and maybe a little bit more of like a modern sort of death metal. There's like blast beats, some intensity in here that will give you like Immolation vibes, but there's a little bit of like Funeral Doom. I mean, that track listing, right? Like the fact that there's the majority of the songs are 15 to 20 minutes long almost. That falls in line with like an Esoteric record. Like it has a bit more in terms of like Funeral Doom size. But within the songs, it leans into like Catatonia, sort of Death Doom, and even some of the more like melodic qualities on early Catatonia. Maybe even slightly some of their goth stuff, but I think probably is better suited for prog than it does goth.
Okay.
So you kind of get like this whole nature vibe here, looking at the album cover, and that's a good idea. So it's more like French pastoral acoustic pieces rather than 90s goth, that I would kind of want to associate with this. But for me, this kind of satisfied like a Funeral Doom record to some degree, but without a lot of the uh, sort of mournful aspects. It feels a bit more like a progressive Funeral Doom release, that has enough dynamic shifts inside of it to sort of limit that, like, potentially, if you're into like mournful congregation, this is going to seem too like up tempo at times.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I like Mournful Congregation.
yeah, like it has enough like Funeral Doom going on, and obviously Catatonia, there's like a Death Doom going on. So there's like three sort of major shifts that happen in the course of this record, where like the intro, outro have these more acoustic pieces, and there's some quiet, sort of subtle moments in the midst of their Funeral Doom stuff. But I would probably first and foremost call this like a progressive Death Doom record with those sort of considerations or influences in mind.
Okay.
But I sort of strap in and get ready for a Funeral Doom listen when I put this on.
Did you hear? Speaking of that sort of stuff, did you hear the new Dream Unending?
I had one of the ones that I haven't had a chance to listen to. But a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah, I listened once and put it in the box where I just get rid of shit and send it to Marty. I really liked their first one, but this new one, man, there's like a good song, and then it just feels like interlude, outro, wandering, like shoegaze for the rest of it. I'm surprised that like most of the people are real, like most of the reviews I've seen and comments, like people really love this thing, and I like the first one, so I'm not here to just like hate on the band. I really like the first one. I was looking forward to this, and I listened to it. I'm like, I know I never need to hear that album even one more time. Like, it's not going to grow on me. Like, the first song I thought was pretty good, and then the rest of it, I was like, wow, this is like, hey, the people who are into this are very patient, because to me it seemed like kind of light prog, so like
Right.
pretty much no vocals or songs. So I'm surprised at the positive reception it got, but it got it. But I would recommend the first release by them. I thought was good.
For sure. I think because it's kind of like the softer, more prog side of the Two Mold guys, right?
Yeah, and Two Mold, like, I like their sound, but their albums haven't held for me entirely. So I just might. But again, like that first Dream Unending, I liked. So I was surprised at how much I liked that. And then we'll see. Like I have seen some people who had the reaction I did, but I'm surprised that, like, for the most part, it's extremely well received. I was like, oh man, this thing loses the thread in 10 minutes, and then there's like 30 more minutes of stuff. Or whatever it is. So not a hit for me. Like the Worm EP or whatever, I thought was a step down from the last two, but I still thought, I'm like, oh, there's still some good stuff here, and I look forward to checking out the next album. Whereas Dream Unending, I'm definitely gonna check that one out online before I just buy it.
Sure.